Welcome to the Pet Sitter Coach podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Grant, a professional pet sitter with over 20 years of experience in building my own sustainable pet care business. Here we talk honestly about pricing, boundaries, burnout, growth, and what it really takes to build a business that lasts. I am so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about something that almost every pet sitter experiences at some point, but very few articulate it. And that is this: the feeling that your business feels so much harder than it should. And let's take note, you're not failing, your business is not collapsing, you're not even necessarily struggling financially, but your business just feels heavier. Heavier than you expected it to feel, heavier than it looks from the outside, definitely heavier than it felt in the beginning. And you love the animals. You 100% care deeply about the pets. You take pride in being dependable. You strive to be a professional. And yet there's this underlying tension. Maybe your phone feels like it runs your life. Maybe you wake up already thinking about scheduling. Maybe when a new inquiry comes in, your first reaction isn't excitement, it's pressure. Maybe you feel slightly behind even when you're fully booked, or you're constantly adjusting your schedule, your pricing, your boundaries, yourself. And I want you to hear something right now. This is not a competence issue. It's not a motivation issue. It's not even a discipline issue. It's a clarity issue. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Clarity is not something most pet sitters are ever taught. We're taught how to care for animals. And let's be honest, for most of us, this is innate for us because we grew up with pets and we have taken care of them our whole lives. So somewhere along the way, we were taught how to show up. We learned how to be kind, flexible, and accommodating. But we as pet care professionals are rarely taught how to schedule in a way that protects us. So instead, what happens? You build organically. And that's what I did. And that's what most of you are doing. You take the first client, then another, and then you tweak pricing along the way. And then you add services because somebody asked for something that's not on the list. You bend a boundary here and there. You adjust your cancellation policy because you feel bad. You respond at 9 p.m. to a text because you just want to be helpful. And over time, what you've built isn't broken, but it isn't defined. And undefined businesses feel heavy. So when structure is unclear, everything feels personal. Every request feels emotional. Each scheduling change feels like a disruption for you. Clarity can change that. Clarity doesn't make you rigid. It makes you calm. And doing business from a calm headspace is powerful. When clarity is present, you don't react. You just respond. You don't scramble. You simply make a decision. You don't accommodate out of pressure. You lead with structure. And that shift alone changes how your entire business feels. So today we're going to unpack what clarity actually means inside your pet sitting business. Not abstract clarity, not motivational clarity. Those won't help you here when your business feels heavy. We're going to focus on operational clarity, structural clarity, and decision-making clarity. So when your business feels harder than it should, it almost always traces back to one of four areas: what you offer, who you serve, what your boundaries are, and what growth means for you. So as we go through this, I really want you to ask yourself, where do I feel friction within my business? Where do I feel hesitation? Where do I feel tension? Because friction is usually a sign that something isn't clearly defined. And once that something is clearly defined, your business will become lighter. It will feel lighter. So let's start with the first area. Let's start with something that sounds simple, but almost never is. What exactly do you offer? And I don't mean generally, I mean specifically. For instance, if someone asked you right now, how does your pet sitting service work? Could you answer confidently and concisely? Or would you find yourself explaining and then adjusting and then softening and then adding qualifiers? Because here's what I've noticed in my coaching work. Most pet sitters are not unclear about caring for pets. but they are unclear about defining their services. And that lack of definition creates a constant micro negotiation in your brain. Recently, I coached a solo pet sitter who came to me completely exhausted. She was not failing. She wasn't struggling to get clients. In fact, she was busy, but she felt super resentful of her schedule, of certain clients, of last minute requests. When we slowed everything down and mapped out her service structure, something became obvious. Her services had evolved organically. So she had multiple visit lengths, some of which were rarely used, but still listed, pricing that varied depending on the client's history, holiday rates that were sometimes enforced and sometimes waived, add-ons that were sometimes charged and sometimes included as a courtesy, extended time requests that were negotiated mid-booking. Yes, you heard that correctly, mid-booking. Nothing she was doing was wrong per se, but almost nothing was truly defined. And when your services are not clearly defined, you negotiate constantly. You negotiate in your inbox, you negotiate in your head, you negotiate in the moment, and constant negotiation is emotionally draining. So here's what happens when your services lack clarity. A client asks for something slightly outside of your services list. You pause. You think about it. You weigh how much you like them. You wonder if they'll be upset. You think about whether you've done something similar before for them. You adjust. And then you tell yourself it's not a big deal. But if you're doing that 5, 10, or 15 times a week, it is a big deal. Micro decisions create fatigue. And ultimately, that fatigue turns into burnout. Clarity eliminates those micro decisions. Clarity sounds like this. These are my visit lengths. This is what each one includes. My rate is XYZ. This is how holidays are structured. This is how last minute bookings are handled. This is how extended pet care is priced. And when something falls outside of that structure, your response is not emotional. It's structural. You're not saying no to a person. You're just referencing a system that you've created and put in place. That shift alone removes pressure. So here's the deeper layer. When your services are undefined, you start believing that being flexible is what makes you valuable. But in actuality, being clear is what makes you valuable. Flexibility can feel generous. Clarity feels professional. And professionalism builds trust. So I want to ask you something gently. Do you ever find yourself over-explaining your pricing? Or do you ever feel the need to justify your rates? Or hesitate before enforcing a holiday fee? That hesitation is usually a clarity gap. It's not about confidence. It's about definition. If you can't clearly articulate what you offer and why it's structured the way it is, you will always feel slightly on unstable ground, if that makes sense. And clients will feel that instability. Now, here's the part that might surprise you. Clients actually feel safer when your structure is clear. Clear services communicate leadership, that you've thought this through, that you operate consistently, meaning the same rules apply to all of your clients. And consistency creates trust. When we restructured her services, we didn't make them more rigid. We just simplified them. We reduced her visit options, standardized her pricing, and a big one was structuring her holiday surcharges and how they fit into the calendar. We documented what was included and what was not. And within weeks, something shifted in her business. She mentioned her inbox felt lighter. Her calendar felt more predictable and her resentment decreased. Nothing dramatic changed externally, but for her, internally, everything felt calmer because clarity reduces emotional labor. And pet sitting already carries a ton of emotional labor. We are caring for animals that people love deeply. You're stepping into people's homes. You're managing their expectations. You don't need your service list to add more weight to what is already feeling heavy. So here's another reflection for you. If someone asked you today, what exactly do you offer? Could you explain it in under 1 minute? If not, that's not a flaw. It's just a sign that this is your next clarity point. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight, but you do need to define it. Write it down, refine it, simplify it, rinse and repeat. Because when your services are clear, your decisions will feel easier. And when your decisions are easier, your business feels lighter. And that's the goal. Not chaos, not constant hustle, lightness with structure. That is what clarity creates. Now, let's talk about something that sounds simple but carries enormous weight inside your business. Who is your business actually for? Not in theory, we got that part. Not in a generic, I serve pet parents kind of way, but specifically, because here's what I see constantly in coaching. You say you need more clients, but what you actually need are better fitting clients. So about 4 months ago, I coached a dog walker client who told me, I just need more consistent bookings. She was already doing great. She had solid reviews, repeat clients, but always felt drained. When we slowed down and unpacked her stress, the issue wasn't volume. It was alignment. She was attracting clients who texted late at night and expected immediate responses. Clients that pushed against policies. They were always asking for exceptions. She mentioned that she had a client that was always questioning pricing for almost every booking. And here's the important part. She believed that accommodating all of that was part of being competitive. She thought, if I don't say yes, someone else will. And that belief kept her stuck in constant adjustment mode. So I want to say, if you are constantly adjusting yourself to fit whoever inquires, your business will always feel unstable. When you are unclear about who you serve, you end up serving everyone. And serving everyone means you are constantly recalibrating your tone, your structure, your boundaries, and your energy. And that is so exhausting. So clarity about who you serve gives you permission to filter. And filtering is not exclusion, it's alignment. So let's unpack this deeper. When your messaging is broad, your inquiries will be broad. If your website says flexible, accommodating, available anytime, you will attract people who value flexibility above structure. However, if your messaging communicates professional, structured, policy-driven, reliable, you will attract a different type of clientele. We all attract what we signal. And most pet sitters have never intentionally examined what they're signaling, like what they're putting out there. You might think your branding is neutral, but there is no neutral. Every sentence on your website communicates something. And here's what happens when you don't define who your business is for. You'll start internalizing misalignment as personal failure. A client pushes back on pricing, you think to yourself, ooh, maybe I'm charging too much. A client pushes on your boundaries, you think, oh, maybe I need to be more accommodating. A client ghosts you after you raised your rates and you think, oh shoot, should I not have done that? But sometimes the issue isn't pricing. It's that the person inquiring was never your ideal client. Clarity also creates emotional distance, and emotional distance is healthy in business. When you are clear about who your business serves, you can say something like, this may not be the best fit for my business at this time, without panicking and without scrambling, without the guilt. So when I worked with that dog walker that I mentioned, we didn't just adjust her pricing and her schedule. We worked on clarifying her positioning. Then we refined her messaging to signal professionalism and structure. We adjusted her language to reflect confidence instead of accommodation. And something shifted for her. Her inquiries changed almost immediately. She told me she began attracting new clients who seemed to value structure, and she couldn't believe it. She's now getting inquiries from potential clients who respect her response time. Clients who aren't attempting to negotiate every detail along the onboarding process. And here's the subtle but powerful shift. When your clients align with your structure, you feel respected, and so do they. And when you feel respected, you operate with confidence. Now, I want to pause here and ask you something important. Do you feel respected in your business, or do you feel unappreciated? No, do you actually feel respected? Do clients treat your policies as policies or as suggestions? If your policies feel negotiable, that's often a clarity issue in positioning. And clarity doesn't mean becoming rigid or cold. It means communicating with quiet authority. Authority does not require volume. It requires consistency. So here's your reflection moment. If you could describe your ideal client in 3 characteristics, what would they be? Reliable, respectful, organized, communicative, low drama, policy-oriented. Okay, so now ask yourself this. Does your messaging attract that type of client? Or does it unintentionally attract the opposite? Because clarity around who you serve reduces friction before it even reaches your inbox. And friction prevention is so much more powerful than friction management. When you're clear about who your business is for, you stop feeling desperate for inquiries. You stop saying yes to every request. You stop assuming every potential client is a necessary opportunity. You'll actually begin choosing. This takes time and patience in your business, but when you get there, it's so empowering. Your business is allowed to have standards. And it's allowed to have a tone and a personality, and it's allowed to repel as much as it attracts. Repelling the wrong fit protects your energy for the right fit. And that is what sustainability looks like. Not more clients. It's better alignment. Clarity here doesn't just reduce stress. It elevates your entire business. Okay? So now we're going to pivot a bit and talk about boundaries. And I want to approach this carefully because boundaries can feel emotionally loaded. So when you hear the word boundaries, you might think being strict or being rigid or being difficult or less kind. But boundaries are not about being harsh. They're really about being clear. And clarity is protective. I am currently coaching a solo pet sitter who is full-time and working 7 days a week. Yeah, you heard that right. 7 days a week. She gave me her permission to talk about this here so we can use it as a jumping off point. She hasn't taken a full weekend off in months. She responds to messages at all hours, accepts last minute bookings all the time. She has multiple times rearranged her own schedule because a client requested a change. She believed that constant availability was what made her reliable. And here's the important distinction. Reliability can equal consistency. However, reliability does not equal constant availability. If clients can understand how your business operates, that is reliability. If they never know when you'll say yes or no because you decide in the moment, that's unpredictability. And unpredictability creates tension for you and for them. When we looked at her structure, we realized something really simple. Her boundaries existed in her head, meaning they were not written or documented anywhere. They also were not consistently communicated. So every time a client made a request, she evaluated it emotionally, like in the moment. Do I like this client? Is it reasonable? Will they be upset? Have I made an exception for them before? And again, that internal negotiation is exhausting. So here's what I would like for you to hear. When boundaries are undefined, guilt is what fills that gap. If you don't have clearly defined cancellation policies, you'll feel bad enforcing one, right? If you don't have clearly defined office hours, you'll feel obligated to reply immediately. If you don't have clear booking deadlines, for example, we are booking 2 months out for weekends, you'll feel pressured to accommodate last-minute requests. Guilt-based decisions will absolutely drain you. Structure-based decisions will protect you. We didn't make any extreme changes. We just defined her business hours, her response windows, and her booking cutoffs. And also, we defined her holiday expectations and cancellation timelines. So we wrote them down. We put them in her onboarding process. And then she communicated them clearly to all potential clients and current clients. And funny enough, she expected backlash and there wasn't any. Most clients adapt to clarity. In fact, many clients appreciate it. Clarity communicates that you're operating a business, not a favor. So let's pause here for a second. Have you ever said yes to something and immediately felt resentful? That's because that feeling comes often when a boundary is facing you that you didn't enforce. And resentment is a signal. It's not something to ignore. It's information. It's telling you that something wasn't clearly defined or communicated within your pet business. Now, I do want to address something deeper. Many pet sitters tie their identity to being helpful. And my own hand is up. I was there. I'm still there some days, but that is for another podcast. But you want to be accommodating. You want to be kind. You want to be known as reliable. And somewhere along the way, helpfulness turns into overextension. You stretch your availability. You bend policies. You adjust your schedule. You respond very late at night. You say yes when you really want to say no. And slowly, your business begins to feel like it runs you. Clarity flips that dynamic. When you set boundaries that are written and then consistently applied, they stop feeling personal. You're not rejecting a client. You're referencing a policy. You're not being difficult. You're being consistent. And consistency builds trust. Now, here's something subtle but powerful. When your boundaries are clear, your confidence increases because you're not deciding from scratch each time. You're standing on a defined foundation. And when you stand on something defined, your tone changes. You come across as calm and steady. You don't over-explain. Don't apologize for your structure. You simply communicate it. That calmness changes how clients respond to you. So I want to ask you another question. Do you feel like your clients understand how your business operates? Or do you feel like you're constantly clarifying and re-clarifying expectations? If you feel like you're always clarifying, that's often a documentation gap. Boundaries have to be visible to be respected. And that visibility will remove ambiguity. Ambiguity in your business will create stress for you. Now, here's the key shift I want to internalize. Boundaries are not restrictions. They are more like containers. And containers create safety for you, for your clients, for your schedule, for your energy. When you define your business hours, you protect your mental space. And sometimes things like this seem so small, but they really do make a big difference in your day-to-day operations. When you define your booking policies, you'll protect your calendar. When you define your cancellation policies, you protect your income. That's not about being inflexible. That is being intentional. And intentional businesses feel stable. If your business feels reactive right now, this is likely where you need clarity. Pick one boundary, just one, and define it clearly, write it down, communicate it calmly, and then apply it consistently. That consistency will feel so uncomfortable at first because it's new, but the discomfort is not the same thing as being wrong. Discomfort is actually growth, and growth inside structure creates sustainability. You do not need to be available at all hours to be respected. You need to be consistent, and consistency begins with clarity. Now, let's talk about growth. And this one is subtle because growth is where comparison sneaks in. Growth is where pressure builds. Growth is where you start looking around and thinking, am I behind? Several months ago, I coached a pet sitter who came to me convinced that hiring was her next logical step. She said, I think I need to expand. I feel like I should build a bigger business. But when we slowed everything down and evaluated her business, something was clear. She didn't actually have any desire to manage employees. She felt like she should want that, but there's a difference. She was fully booked. She was making consistent income, but she felt stretched because her systems weren't clearly defined. Her onboarding process was informal. Her client communication was not templated. Her scheduling was not automated. She wasn't overwhelmed because she needed a team. She was overwhelmed because she lacked operational clarity. Here's something I want you to sit with for a moment that I think will help. Growth does not automatically solve structural problems. It can actually magnify them. So if your services are unclear, adding more clients amplifies confusion. If your boundaries are inconsistent, adding more volume will most likely increase your resentment. If your systems are undocumented, hiring will add chaos. You cannot delegate what you have not yet defined. And so often in this industry, growth is interpreted as expansion, more clients, more sitters, bigger service areas, more revenue. But sustainable growth is not just expansion. It is stable. It is stability. So when you say you want to grow, what do you actually mean? More revenue? More free time? A more positive reputation? Because those are not all solved in the same way. Growth without clarity feels like chasing the unknown. Growth with clarity feels intentional. When I worked with that pet sitter, she didn't end up jumping into hiring. Instead, we refined, meaning we documented her services. We created onboarding clarity. We worked on structuring email templates. We simplified her scheduling. And something interesting happened. Her business began to feel lighter, more controlled, more defined. And once everything was clearly structured, she realized something important. She didn't need to expand yet. It wasn't time. She just needed to optimize. And optimization is growth. Refinement is growth. Energy protection is growth. Profit margin improvement is growth. Okay, hear me out because that is huge. So I'm going to repeat that. Profit margin improvement is growth. And I will do an entire episode on that topic in the future because it's that important. You don't need a team to have a successful pet sitting business. You do not need employees to be considered legitimate. You do not need constant expansion to be relevant. Sustainable growth means your business supports your life, not the other way around. And this is where comparison can become dangerous. You see another pet sitter hiring, you see someone expanding into new zip codes, and you assume that's the trajectory that you should follow. But their definition of growth may not align with yours. So if what you want is freedom, building a large team may move you further from that. If what you want is predictability, adding complexity may destabilize you. So think about that. Clarity around growth means defining what success looks like for you and your business. Not for social media, not for your peers in the pet industry, but genuinely for you and your business. So here's a powerful reflection. If your business stayed exactly the same size for the next 2 years, but became more efficient and more profitable, would that feel like failure or would that feel like relief? You are allowed to grow strategically. You're allowed to pause expansion. You're allowed to refine before scaling, which I recommend, by the way, because scaling with clarity shows stability, and scaling with confusion will lead to additional stress. And here's something that may feel uncomfortable, but sometimes when you say you want to grow, what you actually want is validation. You want proof that you're doing well. You want reassurance that you're building something meaningful. And growth can feel like that proof. But validation built on expansion alone is fragile. Validation built on structure is sustainable. Clarity around growth protects you from chasing the wrong metrics. Revenue without any boundaries whatsoever will lead to burnout. And volume without clear systems definitely leads to chaos. So expansion without any structure will lead to instability in your business. But the good news is defined growth creates momentum. So when you are clear about what you're building, every decision becomes easier. And ease does not mean laziness. It means alignment. Alignment feels calm. And operating a business with a calm mindset is powerful. So as we begin to close out this episode, let's reflect on the importance of clarity and how it is the shift that you may need in your own business to bring all of this together. If your business feels heavier than it should, it is not because you are incapable or because you're not working hard enough or because you lack the passion for it. It's almost always because something is undefined. Undefined services prompt clients to negotiate. Undefined services can create misalignment. Undefined boundaries can create resentment. And undefined growth most likely will create pressure. Clarity creates a calm mindset, and operating with a calm mindset will create confidence within you and your business. Confidence really changes how you show up within your pet business. When you are clear, you stop reacting. You start leading. You stop scrambling. You start making decisions, and you stop constantly adjusting. You begin feeling the foundation beneath you. And here's something important. Clarity is not created overnight. It gets refined over time. You define something, you test it, you adjust it, you strengthen it. Clarity is built through intention. And intention is a leadership trait. So you are not behind. Don't think that. You are not late to any party. You are not less capable than the next pet sitter. You're here. So by being here, you are refining. Every sustainable business goes through many clarity seasons. They don't have to be dramatic. They're usually thoughtful and structured and strategic and powerful. If you're listening to this and thinking, yes, this is exactly what's happening in my business, I want you to breathe for a moment. Nothing is broken. It's simply undefined. I want to ask you to pick one area in your business, just one. Maybe you decide you're going to define your services more clearly or clarify your ideal client, or you're going to start documenting your boundaries. Make a list. Or you're going to refine your growth vision one layer at a time, because momentum follows clarity. Clarity builds confidence within you and your business, and it creates sustainability, which is the goal for most of us. You started this business because you're an animal lover. You stayed because you care about people too. Now you get to refine it so it also supports you. That's not being selfish. That's how you create a sustainable, long-term pet care business. So, thank you for being here. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with another pet sitter who might need to hear it. And if you're ready to move forward from chaos to clarity inside your own business, that's exactly the work we do inside the Pet Sitter Coach. Thank you so much for listening to the Pet Sitter Coach podcast. If today's episode was helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to give me a review. These reviews help other pet sitters find us, and you can find us on Apple or Spotify. Or if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoy this, please like the video and subscribe so you can hear about future episodes. You can learn more about my work, resources, and coaching by visiting thepetsittercoach.com. And remember, you do not have to do this alone. I'll talk to you next time.